want to show you some other materials. You also get the updated version. This is my very first positive discipline book from 1980. Jane Nelson wrote this book, and I discovered it in 1997 when my older son was 2. My mom was a teacher, a music teacher, and she had taken a professional development class, just randomly signed up for a class called Positive Discipline. And she brought me this book when our older son was turning 2 and said, this was the best training I've ever taken. And I wish I had had this when you were growing up. And so I still have my book that she brought me. And then if you're getting the materials, then of course you'll get the most updated edition. But I just want to say Jane Nelson wrote that book in 1980. So Positive Discipline has been here for 44 years now.
Yeah.
And the other set of tools that I think are really helpful, Maricela, I'm going to ask you to hold up yours because I have this deck of Positive Discipline tool cards. Mine are in
Ah.
English. There, I can see yours. Maricela's are in Spanish. So if you're working with the Spanish speaking community and you want materials in Spanish, the materials are available to you in Spanish. We're going to keep talking about positive discipline and the impact it's had on you, Maricela, and then we'll tell more about the workshop as we're wrapping up. So I'm curious, you've talked about how it's impacted you as a parent. Now, over 5 or 6 years of using this with your daughter, how would you describe the impact on you and her together in your relationship? What do you think has blossomed from your using positive discipline tools and concepts?
I've been pleasantly surprised because don't ever think that your child is not listening or
Hmm.
paying attention because they are. And I've been pleasantly surprised because it really has created this relationship, our relationship, and has helped us with trust and her ability to come back, after there is a lesson to be learned, after there is some discipline that needs to be, that needs to be, taken action, take action on that. And she's come back and she advocates for herself. And either mom, I didn't appreciate the way that you handled that, or mom, that hurt my feelings, or
Mm.
come back and apologize for something. And I've been pleasantly surprised, and I don't want to be like, yay, in the moment.
But that's how you
Um,
feel, right? You get this
but
feeling
that's
like,
how I
yay.
feel.
Yes.
That's how I feel because I'm just like, I must be doing something right,
We
um,
didn't have that in our family of origin. I don't know about you, but we didn't have those um, self-advocating conversations or conversations around what was wrong about the mistake that we made that caused a problem. We didn't have those conversations. It was just for in my family, it was you did this wrong thing, you got a spanking or you got a punishment, and then we just moved on from there. We never even really talked about it. So, what was so valuable to you about having your daughter come back and talk about whatever it was?
I appreciate you bringing up your own, upbringing
Mm.
because my culture, there's just kind of, again, I mentioned earlier, you feel like you're parenting from the inside out. I've had many moments where I was just like, oof, I don't want to do that again. I don't want that to happen again. Because that's what I learned. It was also spanking. It was also raising a lot of raising voices, of parents' voices, and I knew that I didn't want that to be the way that I parented, the way that I raised my daughter. And again, it just helped me, as you mentioned earlier, to respond instead of react,
Mm.
and just have that things happen so quickly. Um, but the most beautiful thing is while we're talking about we're not perfect parents nor perfect are there perfect kids, that we are able to come back and apologize when and mean it.
Mm.
And that is what creates and continues to create to build that trust and that very important relationship, that parent child relationship.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful. Forgiveness, that is what restores relationships when you can get to that
Yeah.
place.
Yeah.
And recognizing, hey, sweetie, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Mommy made a mistake. Mommy's gonna try. to change the way she does things. Can I have an opportunity, a do-over? We're able to come back and have that conversation.
Yeah.
So
And I think,
that's the beauty of it.
and what's the language around that? When we weren't raised to have those conversations, I think what a lot of parents struggle with because it wasn't modeled for us. So if we do want to do different, if we want to be different from how our parents were in some of those tougher moments, and I don't want to cast blame on parents.
No.
Parents, just like we are with our kids, we're doing the best we can with the skills we have and the tools we know how to use. So were our parents. They were doing what was modeled for them. They were doing what they thought was right to help us become fine, upstanding people that they wanted to raise. And yet, there are ways that could have been done differently. And so I don't want to cast blame so much as just create awareness and understanding to say, my parents did what they knew how to do to the best of their ability. And I give them credit for that. And we have a loving relationship. And yet, like you said, there were things that I wanted to do different, to be different. But how? I don't know what that looks like. What does that sound like? So what I really appreciate about positive discipline is that our trainings are very experiential, meaning we do a lot of discussion and role playing where we get to try on what might be the language of our own parenting, traditional, conventional responses to certain behaviors that kids use. And what impact does that have on the child? What impact is it having on the parent? And what impact is it having on the relationship? Is it creating a bridge or is it creating a wall?
Yeah.
And if we want bridges instead of walls, what's some different language or different activity or behavior that we can use as parents that might help correct the behavior, but also really emphasize the importance of the connection and the relationship so that we have connection before we try to correct their behavior, so that we have the trust that we want with each other. So our kids trust us when they can come to us with problems instead of going to somebody else with their problem. I want my kids to come to me and talk about a problem, but they have
Yeah.
to have that trust first. So all of our trainings are very experience based so that we can help parents understand, well, what does it sound like to be kind and firm at the same time? What does that look like if I'm being kind and firm at the same
Hmm.
time?
Hmm.
Because if I'm too kind, I end up being permissive and my child walks all over me, and that's not respectful. And if I'm too firm, I'm being authoritarian and my way or the highway, and I'm creating a big barrier between me and my child. And that's not what I want either. But when I can balance kind and firm, we get what we call authoritative parenting.
Hmm.
So that, yes, there are boundaries and there are opportunities to make and learn from mistakes. And yet there's all that relationship and connecting that helps us move through those moments when our child's making a mistake or we're making a mistake so that we have those joyful moments together too. So positive discipline gives us the language and the tools to effect that change that we're trying to make. Does that
Yeah.
ring with your experience?
Yes, and you know what I appreciated is that with the tool cards that we shared, these tool cards, I learned that your child should be included in
Hmm.
that decision making process of because as they're aging, right, it's about autonomy, it's about growing, and they should be included because they can make a choice, right? If what they're wanting is to make a choice and it might not be the best choice, then you could do that for them. You could explore in a safe way with these tool cards, right? And it's consequences for behaviors, because we're trying to teach them that. So I appreciated the other thing that I learned was, and you mentioned it earlier, you know, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? And what am I deciding
Mm.
with this that is happening? I think oftentimes we want, as we're also teaching them, we want to know feeling. How are you feeling? How does this make you feel? But we don't always think of the feeling immediately. Something
Mm.
happened and it makes us think a certain way. So I appreciated that too, where it breaks it down for us. Okay, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? And then what are you deciding to do now about all of this that's happening, right? So I appreciated that. too, and it very much was very experiential, hands-on. If from we're all different learners, so um, there was a lot of greatness really in that experience, and I remember all of this, even though it was 5 years
Mm.
ago, because that is how impactful it was. And when I go back to the activities that we did, there's a few of them that stand out, and I remember because of what and how impactful it was for me in the moment while we were having that experiential,
Mm.
experience there.
Right.
So thank you, Ava.
Well, you're welcome, and I'm glad it stayed with you so long.